Hi guys, welcome back to our channel. So today we're just doing an extra video just kind of based on the comments from the last video and also some of the things going on from the Comic-Con. What is it? They didn't premiere anything. They kind of just showed season 2. So we're going to kind of dive into that today. If you are new to this channel, please go ahead and click the subscribe button and also hit the bell for notifications so that you know every time we do a new video.
So, like Clueless said in the opening, so this video is to kind of go over some of the things that people brought up in the comments and some things that we obviously saw ourselves in last week's episode, but we just didn't have a lot of time to kind of touch on.
Had to.
So we also going to talk about that. We're going to talk about some of the things that are coming out of San Diego Comic-Con that are pertaining specifically to Cloak and Dagger and some things that we're kind of getting a sneak peek into for season 2. And as well as just a couple fan theories that I think I've kind of come up with just after seeing some of the comments and really trying to think of like what Cloak and Dagger is going forward or what it could potentially be going forward. So the first thing is obviously the big Easter egg that everybody was kind of clamoring about in the comments from last episode, which is the clear connection between Detective O'Reilly and basically like the Netflix series, and basically stating the fact that Detective O'Reilly, who was a detective in New York,
And Luke Cage.
does exactly, well, yeah, essentially what I'm saying is that she has a connection with Misty Knight, and therefore potentially at least may not have her own connection with Luke Cage, but she is at least aware of characters like Luke Cage, Jessica Jones, potentially Danny Rand as Iron Fist, and potentially Daredevil. Like, with her being able to basically get to see Tyrone's abilities up front, and when her boyfriend basically starts asking her like, how does this not freak you out, she basically says, you know, when you grow up in New York, you kind of become accustomed to these things. And she mentions Misty Knight by name. She was like, I really have to tell you about my friend Misty one of these times. Essentially something along those lines. And so that's like a big, just like, wow, like, okay, so there is a connection between this character and that series. I think it was earlier in the season where there was like reference made that she came from Harlem or that she came from New York.
Yeah.
So there was a couple of theories kind of being floated out, like, oh, so does she know Misty Knight? Does she know, is she this detective that was mentioned in, I think it was season 2 of Luke Cage, of this detective that worked in the department but moved down to New Orleans? So last episode definitely confirmed that is in fact the detective that they were talking about in the season 2 of Luke Cage. Which I like. I love how Marvel Studios takes the time to find subtle ways to basically say everything that is going on under our umbrella is connected. You know, we may never get to see Robert Downey Jr. in a Netflix series. We may never get to see Captain America and Luke Cage have a conversation, or we may never see some of these characters interact, but I think Marvel Studios has definitely find very subtle ways of at least saying everything is connected. That a lot of these characters, a lot of these events are connected, and it's helped shape the world that these characters live in, so that when you have something like where you have 2 teenagers that are exposing their powers to people who may have never necessarily, you've never seen them have that type of interaction with people with abilities, they're at least aware that people like this exist, so there's not this big shock factor, and it's not like this whole, oh, let me take like 4 episodes to wrap my mind around this fact that there are superpowered people. Which really does, I think it really helps out Cloak and Dagger, because it keeps it with the pace that it is, where, look, these things happen, these 2 teenagers have these abilities, and there are a select few people who know, but they're not completely rattled by them. Right now, Detective O'Reilly is like the main person, is like the only real person that knows about these abilities that Tyrone and Tandy have. I don't think, she doesn't really know about Tandy's, but she at least knows about Tyrone's. And it just keeps her able to, like, her having that knowledge does make her just more of an integral part of this series, because now she understands both these characters, and she understands that she can help them weigh the balance of which she does with Tyrone. Weighs the balance of, look, yes, you have these powers, yes, you have technically a responsibility to the community, but you're also a kid, and there's also the law, and there's also that stuff kind of still has to matter to a certain extent. So I think that's really, really cool. So my question to you is, with Marvel Studios taking out the time to say, like, hey, Detective O'Reilly is connected to the Netflix series or the rest of the Marvel universe, do you think it means anything going forward, or do you think they just kind of just put that in there just to say, like, hey, this is all connected?
I mean, kind of yes to both. Like, I think it's just, they like leaving us little Easter eggs in all the shows, which I like, because then you kind of got to watch all the shows to figure out what's going on. But yeah, I think they put that in there because, well, now we know that she gets powers, and I think they put that in there so that maybe we would figure out that she's going to get powers. And then I also think that maybe it's going to be connected either in one of the Netflix series again, or maybe the Runaways or something. I think this is going to come back in another show. So I think kind of all of the above.
Yeah, I think it definitely, while we haven't seen Marvel Studios do it yet where they've crossed platforms for different shows, I think by doing stuff like this, it at least leaves the door like cracked. Open. Because just like looking at, based on comic books, right? Cloak and Dagger do have a run-in with the Runaways. Like, that is part of the Runaways storyline of them having some interaction with Cloak and Dagger. Cloak and Dagger originally was focused in New York, so it does leave a door open to maybe if they do eventually becoming these types of Runaways that they were in this comic book, maybe they travel to New York, or at least they visit New York and for a couple episodes or something like that. It leaves this door open. Because just on a somewhat side note, there have been talks about, you know, with Disney and Marvel kind of being in these types of talks to have their own streaming platform. So if they're able to do something like that where they have their own streaming platform, it would make sense that they could basically intertwine all these shows.
And I think that's why they keep doing that. Like, even if you watch like Jessica Jones, they always mention the green guy or the incident, and so like it's really cool because they do leave the door open to potentially, maybe if they do get their own platform, everything can kind of have little crossovers to it. Yeah,
and we also know that Marvel Studios likes to do things in phases, right? And we know that there's not a lot known about Phase 4. But, I mean, there is no reason to say that maybe while some of these characters that we've grown to know and love on the big screen, there's no reason that they couldn't potentially move to the smaller screen.
Exactly.
Not necessarily with the same actors, of course. I don't think Robert Downey Jr. would go to TV or Chris Evans would go to TV, but there's no reason why you couldn't take these types of characters and scale them down to television series all of a sudden.
Exactly.
And their stories kind of continue after all these other type of events. So it leaves... It'd be
sweet if they did a Hulk TV show. That would be sweet.
I mean, even a Captain America one or Iron Man one, like, it leaves the door open for those types of things because, you know, there is such a huge following for these types of shows. So I think by them doing these types of little Easter eggs, like you mentioned, like Jessica Jones, they mentioned the incident. Daredevil, they mentioned the incident, or they constantly make reference to the Avengers, or how these types of characters are so different than the Avengers.
Right.
It always leaves the door open for those types of interactions between all these characters. And Cloak and Dagger is just the latest iteration of that. With now we knowing, like, okay, there's at least one character in this series that is connected to the rest of the rest of the Marvel universe, which connects Tandy and Tyrone to that universe as well.
Yeah.
You mentioned something else though which led me to start having my own theory, which is that Cloak and Dagger could have a connection to the Runaways. And there's one thing that has been going on in the show, or at least that we found out, I would say like in the last 2 episodes, that has led me to believe that there's a connection between Cloak and Dagger and the Runaways. And that is this mysterious substance that Roxxon Corp has been digging for, or that they've been drilling for.
Holy crap!
Yeah. So for those of you who have not seen the Runaways,
you are onto something, my friend.
So for those of you who haven't seen the Runaways, first of all, definitely go watch it. It's really, really good. Worth the watch. It's on Hulu.
Yes.
Definitely worth the watch. If you've been enjoying Cloak and Dagger, you'll enjoy Runaways.
Oh yeah.
But quick spoiler alert for those of you who haven't seen it.
Sorry.
This is a spoiler, so if you don't want to hear about it, maybe fast forward a little bit and I'll be done talking about it in a second. So in Runaways, the parents of the kids that are runaways, their parents are digging for this mysterious substance that has been lost, that's been brought by this alien race. And there's supposed to be like something magical or something powerful about this substance,
Right.
which is why they are digging for it. But essentially what we find, we never really find out much about the substance other than that it's just not from here and that there's some type of, you know, power behind it.
Exactly.
And even though this is in Los Angeles, for all we know, this substance could span the entire globe, or it could be in other places.
Yeah.
And that's important because in Cloak and Dagger, it's essentially a lot of the same thing. Roxxon Corp is mining or digging for some sort of substance or some sort of power force that's, yeah, some sort of fuel or power source that they think that they can use. And the reason that is important is because once they actually strike it, and because they weren't able to control it, that explosion leads to Tandy and Tyrone getting their powers. And so that leads me to believe that that could potentially be the same substance. It's just that Roxxon Corp, because, you know, they didn't have the same technology or resources as the cast and the Runaways did, they were not able to control the explosion or the reaction from that. And that's how you end up with people being infected, becoming terrors as they describe them, and as well as this freak accident where Tandy and Tyrone get powers.
Right.
So that is just a theory that I have. I'm really interested, and I think it would, once again, it leaves the door open, or at least would open the door for these two series to cross over in some form or fashion, where they would have something very similar in common. Even if it comes down to Tandy and Tyrone doing some research and finding out like, wow, they're mining or they're doing the same thing in Los Angeles. And let's say they get the whole thing situated in New Orleans and they decide to go on a mission, or they decide to be like, look, we have to stop this everywhere that it is. And that leads to them going to Los Angeles and running into the Runaways. And there's a brief little crossover there.
Right.
So that's just a theory that I have. I'm really interested in knowing what you guys think about that theory. So I would definitely like to see what you guys have to say in the comments about that. But the last thing that we want to touch on is, like Khalil was saying in the beginning, some of the stuff that's going on at San Diego Comic-Con. So essentially, obviously we didn't get to go, but I've been following it pretty religiously for a number of different reasons. But, you know, obviously just because I'm a nerd and I like finding out these different things. But at San Diego Comic-Con, they did show like an extended trailer of like the last 2 episodes of Cloak and Dagger, which I kind of like kicked myself for watching because I feel like I got to see a little too much. But
on purpose, I didn't watch it.
So while we get to see a lot of like the climatic stuff that's going to end up happening in the last 2 episodes, one of the big nuggets that came out of this is this poster that they have, or like this slogan that they have for season 2. And essentially all it says is season 2 will be mayhem. But mayhem is like in capital letters and it's glowing and it has like a claw mark, I believe, next to it. And the same thing goes with the poster. The poster is essentially Tandy and Tyrone, has the title of the show, and I think underneath it says season 2 will be mayhem, and there's a claw mark in the street. This is important because going back to Detective O'Reilly, in the comic books, Detective O'Reilly eventually develops powers and becomes a vigilante named Mayhem. And Mayhem has a number of different abilities where she's able to, I think, like control like some sort of like gas, and that causes people to be like paralyzed, and she has claws and things of that nature. Now, the first thing to assume is that, okay, Detective O'Reilly is going to get powers, and she's going to become like this vigilante that works along Tyrone and Tandy. But the way that it appears in the poster, it almost could be interpreted another way, where Mayhem is the next villain in this series.
That's what I was gonna say. That's kind of what it sounds like.
And I think that would be a great way to go, because so far we have not seen a quote-unquote supervillain. And what better way than to thrust these two characters in a role where they have to work together to stop something than one, stopping a friend that they were kind of started trusting, but somebody who's probably going out of control and maybe doesn't know how to control her abilities for whatever reason.
Right.
And they feel like it's their responsibility to stop her or to get her under control.
Interesting.
So that is something to definitely look forward to in season 2. I know there was a couple people who left comments asking if we had seen that from Comic-Con. Just so you know, we did.
No, you did.
Well, I did.
I don't want to see because I don't want to spoil.
But I mean, it seems like we both would be that's something we both be excited in seeing. I don't really want to see like 3 heroes kind of working together. I would like to see Tandy and Tyrone continue to grow as heroes and as characters, working together to stop not necessarily a form of evil, but just something out of control.
Right.
Which is something that I think Detective O'Reilly would be a clear example of if she's not able to control her abilities. But that's pretty much going to wrap up this video. Like I said, let us know what you guys think in the comment section below about a lot of the things that we discussed. My fan theory about the connection between Cloak and Dagger and the Runaways, what you're most excited for in season 2 of Cloak and Dagger, and any other thoughts that you may have. But other than that, that's going to wrap it up for us today. We'll catch you guys on Thursday.